Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
You know how they say your whole life can change in an instant? Well, for me, that instant came at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in a cramped Jersey City coffee shop when I spilled scalding hot coffee all over the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I'm Chelsea Thompson, and I was supposed to be different. Poised, professional, the kind of woman who never stuttered, never faltered, never let anything shake her carefully constructed composure. But that morning, sitting in Murphy's Cafe with my campaign speech spread across the sticky table, my hand trembled as I reached for my coffee cup. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe it was the fact that I'd been running on 3 hours of sleep for the past month, trying to balance my city council campaign with my day job as a corporate lawyer. Or maybe it was just fate having a twisted sense of humor. One moment, I was reviewing my talking points about affordable housing initiatives. The next, hot coffee was splashing across a crisp white blouse, and I was looking up into the most incredible pair of hazel eyes I'd ever encountered. Jesus! She gasped, jumping back from the table. Time stopped. I swear to you, everything in that cafe froze. The espresso machine stopped hissing. The morning commuters stopped chattering. Even the jazz music seemed to pause mid-note. All I could focus on was her, Julie Roberts. I didn't know her name yet, but I'd remember that face for the rest of my life. Early 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and auburn hair that caught the morning light streaming through the cafe windows. Coffee was dripping down her collarbone, staining that perfect white blouse, and she was looking at me with this expression that was equal parts surprise and amusement. God, I'm so sorry, I stammered, grabbing napkins and nearly knocking over my chair in the process. This was not the image I wanted to project 3 weeks before Election Day, but instead of anger or frustration, she smirked. Actually smirked as she dabbed at the stain with the napkins I'd thrust at her. Relax, councilwoman, she said, and my heart did this weird little flip at the recognition in her voice. It's not a scandal, yet. Our eyes locked again, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. That electric moment when you meet someone and just know, that they're going to matter. A beat passed between us, heavy with possibility, and then she was gathering her things. Julie Roberts, she said, extending her hand. And before you ask, yes, I've heard all the pretty woman jokes. Chelsea Thompson, I replied, shaking her hand and trying not to notice how her touch scent sparks up my arm, and I promised to resist the urge to make any. She laughed, a genuine sound that made my stomach flutter. I appreciate that. I've been following your campaign. Interesting platform. Thank you, I said, then immediately felt stupid for such a generic response. I work in voter engagement technology, she continued, slinging her laptop bag over her shoulder. If you ever need someone to help you connect with younger demographics, give me a call. She pulled out a business card, and as she handed it to me, our fingers brushed. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds, but it was enough to make my pulse quicken. I should probably get you a new shirt, I said, gesturing at the coffee stain. Don't worry about it, she replied, that smirk returning. I consider it a badge of honor. How many people can say they were personally baptized by a future city council member? And then she was gone, leaving me standing there with her business card in my hand, and the distinct feeling that my carefully planned life had just taken an unexpected turn. I tried to focus on my campaign for the rest of the day, but I kept thinking about her, about the way she'd laughed off the coffee incident, about how she'd recognize me, about the confidence in her voice when she'd offered to help with my campaign. By evening, I'd looked up her company online 3 times and drafted about 7 different emails I was too nervous to send. It took me 2 days to work up the courage to call her. Julie Roberts, she answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional. Hi, it's Chelsea Thompson, the coffee spiller from Murphy's. Ah, the infamous councilwoman, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I was wondering if you'd call. I was thinking about your offer, I said, pacing around my apartment, about voter engagement, and I'd love to hear more about what you do. There was a pause, and then, are you free tonight? That's how I found myself in Julie's apartment that evening, sitting on her couch with my laptop open, supposedly discussing campaign strategy, but mostly just trying not to stare at her. She'd changed into jeans and a soft green sweater that made her eyes look even more incredible, and she had this way of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was thinking that was completely distracting. So this algorithm, I said, leaning closer to look at her screen, it predicts voter concerns? Among other things, she replied, and I caught a hint of something playful in her tone. What else does it predict? I asked, my voice coming out softer than I'd intended. She turned to look at me, and suddenly we were inches apart. I could smell her perfume, something light and floral that made my head spin. Her eyes dropped to my lips for just a second before meeting my gaze again. It predicts, she said quietly, what people really want. My phone buzzed, shattering the moment. I glanced at the screen and saw a text from my campaign manager. Emergency meeting tomorrow. Opponents are making moves. I should probably go, I said reluctantly, but Julie was already looking at something on her own phone, her expression shifting. Chelsea, she said slowly, I need to tell you something. The tone of her voice made my stomach drop. What? I just got an offer from the Hampton campaign. Richard Hampton was my opponent, a well-funded real estate developer who'd been leading in the polls until recently. The fact that he was trying to hire Julie meant he saw her as valuable, or that he wanted to keep her away from me. Are you going to take it? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me for a long moment. I don't know yet. I left her apartment that night with a knot in my stomach and the terrible feeling that I'd just lost something important before I'd even had a chance to understand what it was. The next morning, I found out Julie had taken the job with Hampton's campaign. For the next 2 weeks, I saw her everywhere. At debates, sitting in the opponent's section, watching me with those sharp hazel eyes. At campaign events, standing in the back of the room, taking notes on her tablet. At press conferences where she'd whisper something to Hampton's campaign manager and he'd nod seriously. It was torture. Every time I saw her, I remembered that moment on her couch, the way she'd looked at me, the electricity that had crackled between us, and now she was working for the enemy. The worst part was that she seemed to be helping him. Hampton's social media engagement shot up overnight. His campaign events became more polished, more targeted. He started using phrases that sounded suspiciously like things I'd said in my own campaign materials. But then something strange started happening. During our first televised debate, I stumbled over a question about infrastructure funding. It was a topic I knew well, but I'd been thrown off by Hampton's aggressive interruption. As I fumbled for the right words, I caught sight of Julie in the audience. She was mouthing something. 10 billion in federal grants, I said, the words coming to me suddenly. Available through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It was exactly the answer I'd needed, delivered with confidence that I definitely hadn't felt a moment before. After the debate, as I was gathering my things backstage, I felt someone approach. Nice recovery on the infrastructure question, Julie said quietly. I turned to face her, trying to read her expression. Was that you? Was what me? The answer. I saw you. She stepped closer, and I caught that same light perfume that had distracted me in her apartment. I have no idea what you're talking about. But she was smiling, just slightly, and I knew. Why are you helping me? I whispered, because she said, her voice low enough that only I could hear, "I like watching you win." A shiver ran through me, and not just from her words. There was something in her tone, something that felt like a promise. "Julie, Councilwoman Thompson?" A reporter had appeared, microphone in hand. "Can I get a quote about tonight's debate?" When I looked back, Julie was gone. This became our pattern. She'd be there, working for Hampton, but somehow always finding ways to help me. A strategic weakness in his campaign that she'd let slip to my manager. A heads up about a negative ad they were planning. Small things, but enough to keep me competitive. I started looking forward to seeing her, even under these strange circumstances. There was something thrilling about our secret communications. The way she'd catch my eye across a crowded room and give me the slightest nod. It felt like we were playing a game that only we understood the rules to. But games, I learned, have a way of getting complicated. 3 weeks before the election, I woke up to my phone buzzing incessantly. My campaign manager, Sarah, was calling. "Chelsea, we have a problem," she said without preamble. "Check the Herald's website now." I pulled up the Jersey City Herald on my laptop and felt my world tilt sideways. The headline read, "Councilwoman's late-night meetings with opponent's advisor, affair or espionage." Below are photos. Photos of me leaving Julie's apartment, building at 2 a.m., photos of us talking intensely at a coffee shop, photos of us standing close together at a campaign event, her hand on my arm. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "this isn't what it looks like." "What it looks like," she said, "is that you've been having an affair with Hampton's campaign advisor. Do you know what this could do to us?" We were finally pulling ahead in the polls. I stared at the photos, at the way Julie and I looked together. There was something intimate about them, something that suggested more than just political strategy sessions. Which, if I was being honest with myself, was exactly what I'd been hoping for. "I need to call her," I said. "Chelsea, no." "Whatever. It ends now. The press conference is in 2 hours. But I was already dialing Julie's number. "I'm assuming you've seen the news," she said instead of hello. "Julie, I'm sorry. I don't know how they got those photos. It doesn't matter how they got them. The question is what we do now." There was a pause. "Chelsea, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you weeks ago." My heart started racing. "What?" "I never actually started working for Hampton. I took his money, yes, but I've been feeding him useless information while helping you behind the scenes." I sat down heavily on my couch. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've been running a double agent operation for the past month because I couldn't stand the idea of you losing." "But why? Why would you do that?" Another pause, longer this time. "Because that night in my apartment when you asked what the algorithm predicted, I lied. It doesn't predict what people want, but I do know what I want. Julie ... I want you to win this election. I want Hampton to lose. And I want you to know that every moment we've spent together, every look, every almost kiss, it's all been real." I closed my eyes, feeling a rush of relief and terror, and something that might have been love. "The press conference is in 2 hours. I know. I'll be there." "Julie, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. We're in this together now." The press conference was a disaster. Or at least, it started that way. Sarah had prepared a statement denying any improper relationship. But as I stood behind the podium looking out at the crowd of reporters, I caught sight of Julie standing in the back of the room. She was wearing a navy blue dress that I'd never seen before, and her hair was pulled back in a way that made her look both professional and impossibly beautiful. When our eyes met, she smiled and nodded slightly. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, Setting aside my prepared remarks, I want to address the photos that were published this morning. The room fell silent. Julie Roberts is one of the most brilliant political strategists I've ever encountered. She's innovative, ethical, and completely dedicated to engaging voters in the democratic process. I paused, finding her face in the crowd again. She's also the woman I'm falling in love with. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and Sarah looked like she was about to faint. But Julie was pushing through the crowd, making her way to the front of the room. "Councilwoman Thompson," she called out, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Care to comment on your relationship with Miss Roberts?" I realized she was giving me a chance to clarify, to walk back what I just said. But I didn't want to walk it back. "Our relationship?" I said, stepping away from the podium. "It's simple." Julie had reached the front of the room now, and I could see the challenge in her eyes, the way she was daring me to be brave. Julie is helping me revolutionize voter outreach in this city. She's bringing fresh ideas and new technology to engage people who have been ignored by traditional campaigns. I paused, looking directly at her. And yes, I'm also very attracted to her. The crowd roared again, but this time it didn't sound entirely disapproving. There was something else in that noise, surprise, maybe, or even approval. Julie was. Grinning now, that same smirk she'd given me in the coffee shop all those weeks ago. She stepped up to the microphone. "If I may," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, "I'd like to address the allegations about my work with the Hampton campaign." The room quieted, everyone leaning forward to hear. "It's true that I accepted payment from Mr. Hampton's campaign. What's also true is that I've been providing them with completely fabricated data while secretly working to ensure that the best candidate wins this election." She turned to look at me. "That candidate is Chelsea Thompson. Are you saying you've been committing fraud?" A reporter called out. "I'm saying I've been fighting for what I believe in," Julie replied. "And what I believe in is transparent, innovative government that actually serves the people." She pulled out her tablet and held it up. "I've been working with Councilwoman Thompson to develop a new platform for voter engagement. It's an app that allows residents to directly communicate with their representatives, track policy changes, and participate in local government in real time." The room was buzzing now, but it was a different kind of energy. People were interested. "This platform," Julie continued, "represents the future of local politics. It's about breaking down barriers between citizens and their government, and it's exactly the kind of innovation we need in Jersey City." I watched in amazement as she commanded the room, turning what should have been a scandal into a campaign launch. She was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I found myself falling for her even harder. "One last question," she said, looking directly at me. "Councilwoman Thompson, what do you say to voters who might be concerned about your personal relationship affecting your professional judgment?" I stepped back up to the microphone, my heart racing. "I say that Julie Roberts makes me want to be better. Better at my job, better at connecting with people, better at fighting for what's right. If that's the kind of influence voters are worried about, then I hope they'll consider that a positive." The crowd was actually applauding now, and I realized that somehow, against all odds, we'd turned this potential disaster into a victory. After the press conference, Julie and I escaped to a quiet corner of the building. The adrenaline was still coursing through my veins, and I couldn't stop grinning. "That was insane," I said. "That was perfect," she replied, stepping closer. "You were perfect. I can't believe you've been playing double agent this whole time. I can't believe you just announced your feelings for me on live television." I reached out and took her hand, intertwining our fingers. "No regrets." "None," she said, and then she was kissing me right there in the hallway of the municipal building, and it was everything I'd imagined and more. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against hers. "So what happens now?" "Now," she said, "we win this election. And then we change how politics works in this city. And after that," she smiled, that same smile that had captured my heart in a coffee shop weeks ago. "After that, we see what else we can build together." The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. Our app, which we called City Connect, launched to incredible response. Young voters who had never participated in local politics were downloading it, engaging with campaign materials, sharing their concerns about city issues. The technology press picked up the story, and suddenly we were getting attention from political analysts across the state. But it wasn't just the app that was generating buzz. Somehow, our relationship had become part of the story in a way that felt positive rather than scandalous. People were talking about authenticity, about politicians who were willing to be vulnerable, about love as a force for political change. "You know what I think?" Julie said one evening as we worked late in my apartment, surrounded by campaign materials and takeout containers. "I think people are hungry for something real. They're tired of politicians who seem like they're playing characters." "Is that what you think I was doing before?" I asked, looking up from my laptop. "I think you were being who you thought you had to be," she said gently. "But the woman I fell for is the one who spills coffee on strangers and admits her feelings." In press conferences, I laughed, remembering that first morning in Murphy's Cafe. "You fell for me because I'm clumsy." "I fell for you because you're human," she said, moving to sit beside me on the couch. "And because when you care about something, you care completely." "I care about you completely," I said, kissing her softly. "I know," she whispered against my lips. "And I care about you too." Election night was both the longest and shortest night of my life. We'd gathered at campaign headquarters to watch the results come in, surrounded by volunteers and staff, and what felt like half of Jersey City. The early returns were close, closer than anyone had expected. But as the night wore on, we started pulling ahead, first by a few hundred votes, then by a few thousand. By 11 p.m., it was clear that we'd won. The room erupted in cheers, and suddenly I was being lifted up by volunteers, surrounded by reporters, pulled in every direction at once. But through it all, I kept looking for Julie. I found her in a quiet corner, watching the celebration with a smile on her face. "Congratulations, Councilwoman," she said as I approached, and the way she said it made my heart skip a beat. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Yes, you could have," she replied. "But I'm glad you didn't have to. So what now?" I asked. "Are you going to keep working on political campaigns?" She smiled, that mischievous expression I'd come to love. "Actually, I have a better idea." "What's that?" "I was thinking about starting a consulting firm, specializing in political technology and voter engagement." "That sounds amazing," I said. "You'd be incredible at that." "I was hoping you might want to be my first client," she said. "You know, help you implement all those campaign promises." I laughed. "I think I can afford your rates." "Oh, my rates are very reasonable," she said, stepping closer. "I accept payment in coffee dates and campaign victory kisses." "I think I can manage that," I said, and then I was kissing her again, right there in the middle of the victory party, surrounded by cheering supporters and flashing cameras. When we finally broke apart, Julie rested her forehead against mine. "You know what the best part about tonight is?" "What?" "This isn't an ending," she said. "This is a beginning." She was right. The election was just the start of everything. We'd built together the policy changes, the technology innovations, the way we'd help other candidates run authentic campaigns. But more than that, it was the beginning of us. 6 months later, as I sat in my city council office reviewing the latest City Connect engagement numbers, I thought about that Tuesday morning in Murphy's Cafe. about how one clumsy moment had changed everything, about how sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Julie knocked on my office door, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need caffeine, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Thanks, I said, accepting the cup gratefully. Any interesting voter feedback today? Actually, yes. There's a group of college students who want to propose a new bike sharing program. They submitted a detailed proposal through the app. That's fantastic, I said, but I was more focused on the way the late afternoon light was catching her hair. The way she got excited when she talked about civic engagement. Chelsea, she said, noticing my distraction. Are you listening to me? Always, I said, reaching across the desk to take her hand. I love watching you get excited about this stuff. Someone has to keep you focused on the actual work of governing, she said, but she was smiling. I am focused, I protested. I'm just also focused on you. She laughed, that same laugh that had captivated me in a coffee shop all those months. Adele, well, try to focus on both. We have a city to run. We do, I agreed, bringing her hand to my lips for a quick kiss. And we're going to be amazing at it. Looking back now, I realized that spilling coffee on Julie Roberts was the best mistake I ever made. It led to everything, the campaign, the election, the love of my life, and a new way of thinking about politics and public service. Sometimes people ask me what the secret was to our campaign success. They want to know about voter targeting, algorithms and social media strategies and grassroots organizing techniques, and all of that matters, of course. But the real secret, I think, was authenticity. It was being willing to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to show people that politicians are human too. It was choosing love over fear, connection over separation, truth over image management. Julie taught me that. She taught me that the best campaigns aren't about convincing people to vote for a character you're playing. They're about showing them who you really are and trusting them to make the right choice. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find someone who sees who you really are and chooses to build something beautiful with you. As I finished up my work that evening, Julie waiting patiently in the chair across from my desk, I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve the city we both loved. But tonight, I was just grateful for spilled coffee and second chances, for brilliant women who take risks, and for the kind of love that makes you want to be better than you ever thought possible. Ready to go home? Julie asked, standing up and gathering her things. Ready, I said, switching off my computer and standing to join her. We walked out of City Hall together, hand in hand, and I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. After all, we'd already proven that the best things in life are worth fighting for. And sometimes they're worth spilling coffee for too.